Hi! In this video, we're going to go over the first practice question for your final, which is the introvert function. So in this function, we want to take a matrix and make it so that each of the numbers has been spread out and there are zeros between all the numbers. To visualize this, we're going to take a matrix that looks like this. So we have these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to spread out those numbers so that they're all surrounded by zeros. So this new matrix, our B matrix, is going to be our output. And we'll note that it has twice as many columns plus 1 and twice as many rows plus 1. So we'll use that information when we start coding. Moving into our code, I'm going to create a new script. Make sure that it's on the right monitor. And I'm going to start my code with the header line that I want. So it's going to be function b equals introvert of a. Let's go ahead and save that function. When I save the function, I want to make sure that I'm saving it as the same file name as the function name. Once I save this function, I can start the function by finding the size of A using the size function. So here R is the number of rows in A, and C is the number of columns in A. So if A is going to be a certain size, and B, we just said, so B will have 2 times R plus 1 rows and 2 times C plus 1 columns. So that's going to be the size of our B array. So it's going to be, we're going to have twice as many rows because we have a 0 essentially above each number, and then we end with a 0 row. So that's where we get the plus 1. So let's go ahead and create a B matrix that is full of zeros and is this size. So B is going to be, we're going to use the zeros function. And in zeros, we input first the number of rows we want in our array, and then second, the number of columns that we want in our array. If we only put one number into zeros, it will create a square matrix. So we want to make sure that we put both the number of rows and the number of columns that we want in our B array. So it's going to be 2 times R plus 1 rows and 2 times C plus 1 columns. Now at this point, because I've done some work in my code, I might want to go ahead and run it and make sure that it's going to be the right size. So I'm going to go here to my command window, and let's call this B is equal to introvert. Let's just input one number, 1. So that should be a 3 by 3 array. B should be a 3 by 3 array where 1 is surrounded by zeros, but we haven't put the 1 in there yet. So right now it should just be a 3 by 3 array of zeros. When I do that, it looks like it's the right size. Now I just need to put my number in here so that it's surrounded by zeros. So let's go back to our function. So now we need to fill in the values of A into B. So when we start, we want to start on the second row. So let's start with row is equal to 2. And we're going to go through each row of A. So for I equals 1 to R. So this is cycling through the rows of A. We also need to go through each column of A. So let's also have a for J equals 1 to C. So this is cycling through the columns of A. And I like to just go ahead and add those ends and then fill in my for loops from there. So each time I want to start on the second row, and then I want to, in B, row column, where I'm also starting the column, the second column, we're going to put the entry A, I, J. So that means for the example that I did where I just had one number, it would just put 1 in the second row, second column, which is the spot that is surrounded by zeros. But here we're going to start and we're going to put it in the second row, second column. We want the next one to go in the second row, fourth column. So we need to add 2 to column. Column equals column plus 2. So this way, our first entry in A will go in the second row, second column. Our second entry in A will go into the second row, fourth column, and so on until we've gone through all of the columns of A. We end that for loop. We go to the next row of A. We start back on the second column. And now we're on, well, we haven't changed our row yet. Now we have to change our row equals row plus 2 because we want to move on to the fourth row. So we want to be in the fourth row, second column, and then move through, fill in each number, and so on. So let's go ahead and save this. Just so I can see what my code is doing, I'm going to add what says pause right here, and I'm going to remove this, or let's just print B here. So that means I'm going to pause so I can see what my code is doing. Let's also print I and J. And then we can also pause in this one and print. There we go. So I'm going to go here to my command window. Let's do 1, 2, 3. So when I is 1, J is 1, I've filled in that first 1. So that 1 has gone in the second row, second column. When I is 1, J is 2, I've grabbed that second value and it's gone in the second row, fourth column. And then when I is 1 and J is 3, I've filled in the value of 3. If I had multiple rows in the A array, I would then go to this spot right here. So that's going to be my fourth row, and I would do the same thing and fill in the columns. So that is our solution. Just so you know, when I had pause, I had to, let's rerun this. So I'll do CLC. I'm going to rerun this. So when I do pause, you can't see it on my screen, but there will be a little message down here in the bottom left that says press any key to continue. So this means my code has stopped in time and it's waiting for me to press any key. So I come in here in my command window, I can press any key. I typically just press the down arrow, and then it moves past that pause until it hits another pause, and so on. So this is a nice way to kind of step through your code slowly and visualize what it's doing. So it'll stop each time it has a pause. I'm going to go back into my code and remove the pauses because when I turn it in, I don't want them there. If we got stuck on this during the final, I recommend, instead of running it as a function, commenting out this line and putting in a sample input. That way you can also kind of see what your code is doing along the way, and you can see all the variables that have been saved. So you would comment out this first line and then just input your sample A equals whatever you wanted to check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that way you could see what the values of R and C are. You could see how row and column change in your code, and so on. Just before you turn in your function, make sure you comment out your sample input and uncomment the first line, because I want you to turn it in as a function if that's what the code says or what the prompt says. So this was our first example for the final, the introvert code, where we added zeros all around all the values.